This is a very persuasive photo comparison, an argument that the person on the right, who is seen in the Martin film, is Phil Willis, the person on the left. It's a convincing, persuasive argument that they're the same person. However, I think this is a mistaken identification, and I don't think it's an accident. This is the person of interest here in the Martin film, and this is the beginning frame of the film clip I'm going to show. And you can follow along with him. I've got it slowed down, of course. And then there's a cut in the film right there, and then he appears on the right-hand side holding a camera. Now, my explanation for this is that has been, until recently, and is once again, is that this is James Powell, the man who supposedly took the Powell photo, and that the Martin film was altered in order to make it look as though he was holding a camera when he was actually holding a walkie-talkie. And the reason I think Powell had a walkie-talkie is because he said he was at the intersection of Houston and Maine when the president came by there, and the president came by there at about the same time you can hear on the Channel 1 recording somebody apparently saying, "Alas, the past president." I think this was a signal from one conspirator to another, or to the others, that the president was at a particular position at this time. That is, he's on the way to you guys. And after Powell, he said he took a photograph there. After he took the photograph, which we've never seen, then he said he ran to Dealey Plaza, and when he got there, he heard shots, or on the way there, just before he got there, he heard shots, and when he got there, somebody pointed at the building, and he took the Powell photo. But the trouble with this story is that Edward Coyle, who worked in the Army Intelligence Office with Powell, said that after the president was shot, they got a phone call from Powell, and the Powell wanted them to bring him a camera. And Coyle says they got a camera, they loaded it with film, and they ran down to the Texas School Book Depository. Powell had been inside the building, and they wouldn't let him out because the building had been sealed off. Coyle got Powell out of the building and apparently gave him the camera, and he doesn't think that Powell already had a camera. Yet if Powell didn't already have a camera, how could he have taken the Powell photo? And if Powell did already have a camera, why would he want another? And there are no more photos from Powell in Dealey Plaza. The only photo he says he took there was the Powell photo we now know about, and no others. So if they brought him a camera, apparently he didn't use it. So I say that he didn't have a camera when the Powell photo was taken, therefore somebody else took it. I think that was Robert Jackson, but I won't get into that here. And Powell wanted a camera brought to him so that if he had been seen carrying something, he could say it was a camera and not a walkie-talkie, because he didn't want it known that he had a walkie-talkie in Dealey Plaza on the day that the president was murdered. So a camera was brought to him, and he was credited with taking this photo, which was actually taken by Robert Jackson. So what I have said until today is that this footage was altered by removing frames, because you could see the walkie-talkie where those frames were removed, and they didn't want anyone to see that. So these frames were removed, and then you can see something in his hands here, and it looks like a camera. But my theory up until now has been that that's really the walkie-talkie, and he's just got his hands in such a way that you could mistake it for a camera. And I've already made videos about this where I go into more detail about that argument. And despite this very persuasive photo comparison, I once again now think that the man in the Martin film is actually James Powell and not Phil Willis. And now I will explain why I have come to this conclusion. I've drawn in a yellow line here in order to draw your attention to underneath that line, where in front of this person there is a dark patch which goes across his body. It's not a straight line. The dark patch is not a straight line, but it goes across his body there, just under the handkerchief in his pocket, across the middle of his jacket, where the opening is, and all the way to the other side of his body. Now watch him as he walks in these frames here. That dark line moves along with him, so it's not a shadow. And in the last frame of this sequence, that dark line suddenly extends past his right arm. Now you might want to argue that he simply has his jacket buttoned up there, and maybe it's pulled over a little funny, and maybe it would look like that. But in the first frame of this film clip, we can see that his jacket is wide open. It's not buttoned at all. And here I've put the two together. I think that makes it easier to see that it looks like some funny dark spot has suddenly appeared for the end of the clip in front of this person. And in that dark spot are his hands with the camera. So what I think this is a relatively crude alteration where frame by frame, for the few frames it is, which is only like 5 or 6 frames, it has been inserted this dark spot with hands and a camera. That is, I think somebody was photographed wearing dark clothing, holding a camera, and that was simply cut and pasted into each frame as he's walking along to make it look as though he's holding a camera. And I think this is an alteration to the Martin film to make it look as though this person is holding a camera, and that's perfectly consistent with my theory of this being James Powell, who was really holding a walkie-talkie, and the Martin film was altered to make it seem as though he had been holding a camera. Also note in the before and after here, that big red handkerchief can't be seen in the before shot, and I would think you'd be able to see some of it. And the pins can't be seen either, though you might not be able to see them. They're kind of small, but they are bright, so I would think you'd be able to see them. But you could argue that that side of his jacket is in shadow, and maybe you wouldn't be able to see them. But I think maybe whoever made the alteration knew that he wanted to make this person look like Phil Willis, and Phil Willis probably was wearing a red handkerchief and those pins, though I can't prove that with the photography. Now, I have recently become aware of the fact that James Powell can be seen in the Cooper film. This is a single frame of that film in higher quality than the film I have available to me. And he's on the far left there. He's holding a camera apparently in front of him, and he has a hairline very similar to Phil Willis. And here I've inserted that photo of Powell into this comparison of Willis and the man in the Martin film, and you can see that the hairline is very similar except for the Superman curl area that Willis has, and in the middle. And in the Martin film, I think probably that's Powell, and his hair has been adjusted to make it look similar to the Willis hair. And as I noted in one of my previous videos recently, the ears of the man in the Martin film, based on what you can see here, look smaller than Phil Willis's ears, and I think that's more consistent with this photo of Powell in the Cooper film. And of course, glasses could be easily drawn on frame by frame well enough to pass off in a low quality film like the Martin film. So I think this is actually Powell walking in the Martin film, and that an editor has adjusted him to consciously make him look like Phil Willis. And this is the Cooper film in motion. Powell is on the left there, and I think he knows he's on camera, and that's why he raises up his own camera and fiddles with it, because he wants people to think he's carrying a camera. And he really is carrying a camera here, but this is after Edward Coyle had given him the camera. So when we see Powell in the Martin film, we're seeing him when he doesn't have a camera. Presumably he's carrying a walkie-talkie, and that's why frames were removed. And then it was altered to make it seem as though he was carrying a camera. And then when we see Powell in the Cooper film, and there was another photographer there too, a WFAA film, he knows he's being photographed. Now he really has a camera, so he holds the camera up so that he will be photographed with a camera, but he never uses that camera. We don't have any photographs of him or by him in Dealey Plaza. He never claims that he took any photographs after the one photograph we know about. So his camera there is a prop, and he holds it up so that he will be seen with a camera. So in my view, my theory is not debunked by the Willis identification of the man in the Martin film. It's actually enhanced, because it shows, and I have shown here, and I have proven to a metaphysical certitude, that the Martin film was altered in order to make Powell look like Phil Willis. And Phil Willis isn't just some random dude. He's a very well-known person. The military intelligence people would know who he is, and they would know that he was there, and they would know he's their boy that they want to make Powell look like, because he already almost has the same hairline. And maybe that's another reason for the Martin film being so crappy, so you won't notice this. Okay, I'm happy again.